All right, well, welcome everyone. Good morning. Thank you. It's an honor to be with you today. I'm David Olivencia. I'm the CEO of Angeles Investors. We're one of the largest and fastest growing angel investment groups in America, maybe the world. And it's an honor that you would take 45 minutes or so of your busy schedule to be with me today as we talk about networking. In addition to that, I've authored the book called Networking Excellence. I've risen the ranks to senior executive at multiple Fortune 500 companies. I've invested in 3 unicorns, 10 over 100 million in valuation, also 12 that have not made it in terms of startups. So I've learned a lot from those as well. I've been invited to the White House across 4 presidential administrations. And all of that, I say, not because I want to brag, but the underpinning to all that is networking. So we're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so sharing my expertise, the writings in the book. I've interviewed 20 or so different leaders who are excellent at networking. I pack it all into this book, an Amazon best-selling book, Networking Excellence, and I want to share these perspectives with you. Just so I get an understanding of the audience today, how many of you are entrepreneurs? About 60%, okay? How many of you are investors? About 10% or so, because some are entrepreneurs and investors. Okay, cool. How many are from the United States? About 70%, okay? Latin America? Okay. My wife's from Colombia, and I spent some time in Puerto Rico. There we go. Asia, how many people from Asia? Few from Asia, okay. Europe? Okay, great. All right, so we've got a good global group. Helped me get an understanding of the group we have in front of us. All right, we're gonna have some fun. Let's jump in. Okay, so I'm biased. I think networking is the most important skill of any skills that are out there. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a business executive, or running a nonprofit or whatever. Why is it? And there's a lot of different statistics, right? If you look at it, for career success, if you want to find a job or a new role in a company, majority of it is not done through ads, it's done through networking. And then LinkedIn is where a lot of these opportunities are happening. As I was writing the book, the other thing that I found out about networking is it's actually important for health. Has anybody seen the movie Blue Zones on Netflix? Yeah. What it basically says is it looks at the cities around the world that have a greater population of those who live beyond 100 years old. And they do a deep dive studying. And one of the key things that they found out is that loneliness is death. And what they found out, a key thing that was consistent across these 7 or so cities was that it was about relationships and people and connections and staying together. So not only can it help you professionally, networking is also important from a health perspective. And if you haven't seen the Netflix series Blue Zones, I highly recommend it. Okay, so a lot of definitions of networking. When you hear of networking, what are some words that come to your mind? Connection. Collaboration. Trust. Schmooze. There you go, schmooze. I like that one. What else? Meeting new people. Excellent. What else? Adding value. Ooh, we'll come back to that one. Strategy. Great. What was that? Communication and? Exchanging ideas. All great. One last one here, and then we'll walk through. What was that? Synergies. Those are some great ones. So this is a room of pros. I can see you guys are all successful entrepreneurs and investors here. So through my experience, through interviewing people, reading tons of books around the subject, I've packed up what I believe is the definition of networking, and I'm going to break it down. Hopefully I'll break it down. Okay, great. It's creating and improving value-based relationships to facilitate mutual goal accomplishment, right? So first part, creating and improving. Networking is an ongoing thing, right? And a lot of times you'll see it just the opposite. People just come at you when they want something. Networking is an ongoing, so you create that relationship and then you improve it. And then I think who mentioned value-based? Somebody mentioned value-based, or I think it was over here, value-based, so you were ahead of it. But it's a value-based, but it's really about me understanding what's of value to you and bringing all the resources that I have available to make you successful, very successful. And then to facilitate, right? And so you want to be, you know, which is from the Latin, facile, to make easy, right? To make it easy to create mutual goal accomplishment. See, a lot of people, when they think about networking, they think it's about me and what I can get out of it. And I'm just going to this event of what I can get. And they come and they're thinking about me. And networking is about mutual. It's about really understanding what the other person wants and how you can make them successful. And then the last thing is goal accomplishment. I think somebody mentioned that as well in terms of the definition, right? So it's very important for you, if you're going to be networking and it's mutual, you better have a clear idea of your goals and also think about how can you help that other person accomplish theirs, okay? All right, so that's the definition. Okay, so in the book I lay out a framework for networking and a way to think about it. People always said to me, David, you're really good at networking. How do you do it? And I kind of didn't know how I did it, so I had to think about what's the ways and the way and the structure that I think about networking. So the first is there's a foundation to it, right? And we're going to talk about the foundation. The second is once you have that foundation, you execute on it. The third is optimization. You're going to optimize off of it. And the fourth, which is why in my book I capitalize the word work in networking, because it takes a lot of work. A lot of you are entrepreneurs. You're meeting customers. You're working with your teams, and then in the evenings, weekends, whatever, you got to put in the work to do networking, right? So, but work is across all of these different layers. Okay. All right. All right. So that foundational layer. We're gonna talk about the foundation of networking. Okay. And I want you all just to imagine and take a step back. Maybe even close your eyes and think about the sun. Think about the sun. One of the most powerful things in the world and beyond the world, the universe, right? If you think about it, it gives us light. It gives us life. It gives us energy. It makes things grow. Planets evolve around the sun. And when you think about the sun and you think about yourself and you think about your network, you are the sun to your network, right? And the more that you understand about yourself with self-understanding, the stronger that sun is going to be, giving life, energy, making your network evolve around you. But it requires deeply, deeply, deeply understanding yourself, okay? So it's deep self-assessment. How many of you are familiar with the tennis player Billie Jean King? Good, about 20% of you. I kind of knew about her, but I didn't know. But she was one of the world's greatest tennis players, definitely an activist for women's rights. And she says, I think self-awareness is probably the most important thing towards being a champion. So if you're with me, you say, okay, this is great. Well, what do I need to do to be self-aware? And you got to put in the work, right? Which is part of the book, Networking Excellence. And so here are a couple things that you should look about and think about if you really want to deeply understand yourself. It's not easy, right? I've been at it a while. I'm still learning about myself. I'm pretty good at networking. I'm still learning about myself. But I would ask you, what is your mission in life? What's your vision? What's your purpose? How many of people have heard of an ikigai? Right? So it's really, it's a Japanese concept, right? What am I good at? What can I get paid for? What does the world need? And there's the last one. What am I good at? And what am I good at? And it's really operating at the center of those. What makes you happy? It's a very deep question, right? What value can you bring to any relationship? And what are your core personal values, right? These are not easy questions. They require a lot of reflection. But if you want to build a great foundation for networking, these are vital to have. And you should asking yourself these key questions. What is your purpose, your mission, and vision? What value do you bring to relationships? Why would somebody take their precious time and spend it with you? Here's another one about self-assessment. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What opportunities do you have? And what are the threats out there? There's another tool in a vehicle. They call it SWOT. You can do it for your business, but you can also do it for yourself. So these are, and it requires deep introspection. Once you deeply understand yourself, you create SMART goals. And in life, I've been told a lot about goals, and yeah, you should set them. But where I saw things really change and go crazy is where I started setting SMART goals. Specific, measurable, realistic, attainable, and time-bound. Right, the set of SMART goals. Highly recommend. And then in my book, I talk about not only setting SMART goals, but then once you set them, stretch, push yourself, scare yourself a little bit with the goals. So we're still on the foundation. You deeply understand yourself. Once you deeply understand yourself, you now can set the right goals, okay? Once you've done that, now you should define and refine your brand. What do you stand for? If the sun is about your network, your brand is your magnet that pulls your network towards you. One of Steve Jobs, when he was, it's an amazing story, right? He starts Apple, grows it. There's a big issues with the board and all that stuff. He gets booted out of Apple, goes to Next Computing, runs Next, and then they bring him back. They bring him back to Apple, and then it's been an amazing run. But when he first came back, it's a video. I highly recommend you Google it or check it out, or Chat GPT it now, I guess, right? He comes back and he basically, he says this in probably one of the most emotional videos, because imagine, he started this baby, he gets kicked out, he comes back, and he kind of lays out what he believes. And he says this, it's a very complicated world. It's a very noisy world. And this was like 20 years ago. If you think it was noisy 20 years ago, could you imagine what it is now? This is a very noisy world. And we're not going to get the chance to get people to remember much about us. So we have to be really, really clear on what we want them to know about us. And this, my friends, is really about your brand. And I'd ask you, if you look at the person next to you or whatever, what would they say about your brand? What is your brand and what are you communicating? So really think hard about your brand. So self-assessment, goals, brand. Then you power that, you power those three with rituals and routines to get it stronger, right? And then Aristotle talks about excellence. He said excellence is an art won by training, is an art won by training and habituation. We do not act rightly because we have virtue or excellence, but rather we have those because we act rightly. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. So if we want to be an excellent entrepreneur, which 80% of you are, right, or an excellent investor, or excellent at networking, or excellent at anything, I would ask you, what habits do you have in place that are making that? Because they help, as will be the next slide, they help put your brain on autopilot. So I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. Any Tony Robbins fans in the house? Good? I would expect a little bit more. I would encourage you to follow him. But basically he says habits put our brains on autopilot, right? So that we can think about bigger things, right? And he said, look, there's lots of different habits we have, like watching Netflix is a habit, right? Going out for running and eating properly is a habit. So we choose the habits that we put into place. And so that's just the foundation, right? If you notice, this is a topic about networking, relationship building. I haven't talked really about people, shaking hands, kissing baby, any of that stuff. But the foundation, if you don't have the right foundation, it's really not going to matter, and you're not going to be excellent at networking. Okay, so then this next part is about execution. So those are the components of the foundation. The next part is execution. And the first thing is, so those from Latin America, can you translate this into English?
Who you are hanging around?
Yeah.
Who you are?
Yes. So, yes.
Who you are hanging around will tell you who you are.
Right. Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. Right. Tell me who you're hanging out with, and I'm going to tell you who you are. Right. So once you have that strong foundation, you can then begin to identify, well, what are the groups and what are the networks that I should be a part of, right? And what you'll see is, you have a current network right now, right? As you strengthen that foundation, you're going to realize, well, what is the network that I should be building, right? And that comes with that deep foundation and putting in the work, and then you start to begin to have your desired network. Then what you do is you begin to identify, well, who are the right people in the network, right? How many people in here have run a marathon? I've done it once, just once. I still run, but if my goal, right, part of my foundation, my goal was to run a marathon, I would think about, well, who are the right people that I should have in my network to make them successful? And so you see here, the goal, right? And actually what it's like, and it's a little bit smart goal, right? Run a 4-hour marathon with a date, right? So it's a little bit more smart, a smart goal. And then you think, well, who are the right people, to help me with this goal? And I lay out a coach, a running partner, somebody who's already run a marathon, the president of a running club as an example. And then this is the type, right? They could be a supporter, an educator. But then you'll see the action. And the action is, well, what can I do to help them? Right? We're thinking really deeply like, what can I do to help them? So for the person who has a running club, could I introduce more members to their club? Can I, Maria's son, maybe I can get her an internship or something like that, right? But always deeply thinking about what can you do to help them be successful, and putting in the work behind it. And then there's the date. So you might think about your goal, your network, a value that you're going to give to that network, and then put a date by when you're going to make that happen. Now, this is just 4, but in my network, in my book, it's about 150, 200. And as part of the habits and rituals that I talk about, every Sunday, I go through the list of about 150, and I think, what can I do to help make these people successful by what date? And then you put it in action, you put in the work. And then with the strong foundation, you can now identify, well, what are the right networks that you should be a part of, right? This is an amazing network, right? But there's nonprofits, there's social networks. The alumni networks are extremely powerful. I didn't mention, I'm on 2 corporate boards, board of directors. Those 2 came from my alumni network. Award networks, so some of you have received awards. Those become a network as well. Employee resource groups, religion, if you do, church is a great network. Your ethnicity or your culture or your race is a group. Professional groups and or political, right? Depending on your political beliefs, a lot of great political organizations and groups out there. And then I put kind of in the middle is like invest in networks. A lot of you can invest time into networks, but what I write about in my book is there's certain networks that you want to spend the money and invest in because they can help you be more efficient and help you accomplish your networking goals and your goals in life faster. I see a lot of people, they're afraid to invest in different networks and groups, and it's important to really think about that. And then Napoleon Hill, amazing author, said it's literally true that that you can succeed best and quickest by helping others to succeed. And so we talked about giving mutual value and helping the other person accomplish their goals. There is so much today that I could out there, like about any of you, that I could I can meet any of you, quickly form a hypothesis and think about what are the ways I can help make you more successful with the network, the resources, and the assets that I have. I would ask you to do that for your network or the network that you're trying to build. Research them, come up with a hypothesis, and give them the value. And the one way that I like to think about relationships and network is like a bank account. That I have defined my network, and I look at them and I think about the interactions that I have with them, and every time I'm doing something that's helping them get closer to their goals, I'm giving them a deposit of value. And if it's really moving them big in their needle to help them accomplish their goals and more rapidly, it's a big deposit of value. And over time, you keep making those deposits of value. Eventually, you're going to make an ask and a withdraw, and you think about that as the relationship. And so that's a good way to think about networking. And so in the book, I talk about who's wearing your t-shirt, so that you want to give so much value to people in your network that when you're not in the room, they're talking about you and how much value that you've given, right? My dear friend Mont, in the back, right? I'm wearing his t-shirt, right? Who's wearing your t-shirt? So when Mont is not in the room, and he's doing amazing things at Purdue Northwest with the Entrepreneurial Center and all, but when he's not in the room and other people are saying, hey, who's doing startups and manufacturing and I'm talking about Mont and the value he's adding and what he's doing and how he's growing a whole generation of entrepreneurs. So when you're not in the room, are you giving enough value to people so that they're talking about you and how much of a value creator you are? Okay, so this one is, this is a great story. This is a story. Robert Rodriguez is in my book, and he was trying to build a relationship with an executive that he had, and he reaches out to this executive and says, let's say his name is Johnny. He says, Johnny, hey, I have some tickets to a gala dinner in Chicago. Would you want to join me? And Johnny says, no, I'm just too busy. And then he says, okay, interesting. And then he says, hey, Johnny, maybe a couple months later, Johnny, I've got tickets to a golf outing this coming weekend. Would you and your family like to, come join me for this? And Johnny says, no, I'm too busy. And there was one more event, and I can't remember, but he says, Johnny, would you like to join me at this, right? And can you guess what Johnny said? I'm too busy. I'm too busy, right? So he kind of just said, hey, this guy doesn't want to build a relationship. It's okay, and I'm going to move on, right? And I think we should do that, right? If you have the confidence in yourself and you're bringing the value, you don't need to move on to other people. You have 100 people, or at least I had 150 people. I'm going to give value to those folks, and great things are going to happen. Well, guess what happens? 6 months later, Robert's phone rings. Guess who it is? It's Johnny. And guess what Johnny says? He says, hey, Robert, old buddy, old pal, how's it going? And Robert's like, it's going okay. He says, hey, Robert, well, hey, I just lost my job. I'm looking for some help. I was wondering if you could give me your network and really help me find a job. What do you think Robert said? He didn't. He should have, right? No, he should have, but he didn't. And he used it as a coaching lesson and a learning lesson. But we define this as 911 networking is what we call it. 911 networking. It's like, think about John. He didn't even say, hi, how's the family? He just went right to, hey, I'm having trouble. Help me out. Give me a job. Help me. You network for your job, right? And so you want to avoid 911 networking, right? And keep those relationships warm. How many people within the last 6 months have had an instance of 911 networking where somebody's reached out to you for an ask, they didn't even say hi or anything? Interesting. Yeah, so that's typically what I get. And let's see if I get the typical thing. And I do this at Fortune 500 companies. How many of you have actually done 911 networking to somebody in the last 6 months? And you'll see a couple hands go up, right? They're kind of reluctantly. And that, hey, look, we all have times of need, right? We have ups and downs in life and our careers. But the key is keep your networks warm and of value so that when you do make that ask, you've had the deposits and they say, yeah, look, I'd love to take your call. What can I really do to help you, right? So that's avoid 911 networking and try to keep those networks warm. Okay, so we talked about the foundation, the execution. Now the last part is optimization. And look, networking events, this is a great one. Very simple model. It's not that rocket science, but you look at a networking event. How do you prepare before? What do you do during and after? And on the before side, like if you have your right foundation, right, coming to an event like this, you should know what sessions you want to go to, who do you want to connect with and meet. During, in my books, there's lots of different tips and techniques on networking, right? Not looking at your phone. I listed a bunch of them. And afterwards was the follow-up on networking. So many times people don't do the follow-up, right? They connect, they meet, and then it just drops off. And they don't follow up with value. And the last thing is, the last part of the optimization is social media. There's a lot on there in social media. I'm not going to read it. But the great thing about digital and social media is you can reach millions of people around the world instantly, for the most part, right? Do you want to know what the bad thing about social media and digital is? You can reach millions of people around the world instantly, right? So if you don't have, we taught a lot, this is why we spend so much time on the foundation. If you don't have the right foundation, you'll see all kinds of people shooting all kinds of stuff about their brand and what's out there on social media, right? So this is why the foundation is important as it relates to social media. How much time do I have? Okay, I actually got a little bit of time. Okay, quick story, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. So there was a IT executive network called ITSMF. It was focused on African American IT executives. I created a network for Hispanic American IT executives called High Tech. We developed a partnership with ITSMF, great networks. I was living in New Jersey, and I wanted to get back to Chicago. All my family's from Chicago, and I grew up in Chicago. And I reached out to this one of the co-founders of ITSMF, and she said, you need to connect with, you want to come back to Chicago, I need to connect with this lady, Adela Cepeda. So I meet Adela Cepeda, and we hit it off in amazing ways. She's a Harvard graduate, and we hit it off in amazing ways. On another thread, I met this gentleman named Luis Ubiñas, and he was in my network, and he was working at Electronic Arts. How many people are familiar with the company Electronic Arts? Gaming company, probably one of the top gaming companies in the world. He was on the board of directors, interesting network, and he was in my network, and I wanted to add value to him. So I reached out to Luis, and I said, hey, Luis, Would love to connect. You have a passion for education. I have a passion for education. Your family's from Puerto Rico. My family's from Puerto Rico. And we did all, and he ended up meeting with me. What I found out over time is we kept doing things. He was a Harvard alum. Adela was a Harvard alum. They really had never met. So I connected the two. They hit it off. And Adela is on the board of Mercer, a bunch of mutual funds, UBS funds, Mercer funds, Pathway funds. These are $100 billion type funds. And she ends up putting Luis on the board of one of the funds. And you can trace it back through my connection that I gave to those two. Luis Ubiñas now, he's also now on the board of AT&T, right? Big telecommunications company. And then as I was going to serve on one of my board of directors, I was having lunch with Adela and Luis. Once a year, we all get together. And I said, hey, Luis. He said, hey, David, how's it going? It's going great. I goes, hey, there's this board that's looking for me to serve on their board of directors. It's a company called Schurz Communications. And Luis looked at me. He said, Schurz Communications? I said, yeah, they're out of Mishawaka, Indiana, about 2 hours north of here. And he said, Schurz, well, I serve on the board with one of their board members, and I know them. And I don't know if I needed that connection or not, but it was an interview process, and it likely helped. And it's to just show you how connections and networks, you never know how they, and it's all value given. I'm connecting and I'm giving value along the way. And then the last one is, I had the honor to open the NASDAQ. There was a lot of work that went into that, from meetings at the White House to leveraging my technology network, to contacts at the Wall Street Journal, to making the ask, a lot of different things that made that happen. And so this is another just kind of moment that captures networking excellence. So again, that's the framework, your foundation, execution, optimization. There's a lot in there. And I can have 12 minutes or so to answer any questions.
Hey, good morning. With the exception of avoiding 911 networking and adding a lot of value, do you have any advice for people that are out in the field networking to not maybe seem so transactional?
Yeah. So one is you gotta have your foundation, right? Is one, right? So are you even in the right room, right? So be very disciplined and focus on, your values, what value you can bring, your goals, all those foundational stuff. And then, what I've learned over time, and I'm always learning. I think we're always learning, is that it's not very forced. It's just very natural. Be very genuine. Be very, But what I found is I wasn't always in the right room. I was in different networking events that I should have been, and the time is our biggest asset, right? And really, those who achieve networking excellence are very, very deliberate about how they choose their time. So that's what I would do there. We'll go here and then there.
How you do to find the other one's interest in order to add value to them? How is that investigation? So if I want to connect with you, how I get to know what are your interests so I can add value to you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So anybody in here, I would, it's like deep investigation, everything from ChatGPT to Google to LinkedIn to YouTube, and then it's kind of, even in my book I talk about, I'll go into sometimes look who they've done political donations to, all where their background is, who their family is. 80% of it is online. You can really dig deep. And then but that's just information, right? So then you have to say, okay, now I know a lot about this. Oh, he's in this board, he's in this, he's connected to this. But then you have to formulate what are the top 5 things that person cares about? That they wake up every day and that's on their mind, and that's what they want to do. So one side is the research. The second side is like formulating the hypothesis, like what are the top 5 things that I think that this person wakes up every day and cares about? And then you got to step back and with a strong foundation say, okay, where can I help him or her with any of those things? And that requires a bit of thinking and reflection as well. Okay.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I was the person you pointed to initially, but it seems like we're at a stage with social media that a lot of people are pulling back from social media and don't necessarily want to be connecting all the time on it. And so how do you maintain connection with people who are in that mindset where they don't really want to like be engaging with social media?
Yeah, it's everybody. Well, it also goes to your foundation and what you believe and what you like and what makes you happy, right? So, if social media isn't aligned to those things for you, I would say, don't do it. There is benefits though. At least the way I see it is that I've got a national and international network, and it helps me stay connected and keep my network warm by leveraging social media, whether it's what I put out and my brand and what I put out there from a brand perspective on a regular basis. It's very hard for me to stay connected and keep my network warm if I'm not doing that. You can go to so many events and that does it, but it's hard to scale. So in summary, I would say it's got to be natural to you, part of your foundation, so you have to really think about that. But I would encourage those in this room to think about social media as a tool and an asset to connect with your network, add value to your network, and keep your network warm. We'll go there, Mont, and then we'll go down here. Is that okay? Yep.
Yeah, so this is a great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's opening my mind about being a networker, and as an introvert, it's pretty hard. But anyway, my question is related to being very intentional about choosing the room that you join and how you parse out your time. How do you balance that with innovation, which is sometimes the collision of two cultures and the integration and the synthesis and the organic things that happen that you wouldn't have expected? So how do you keep from missing opportunities by being so intentional about being in specific rooms, as you said?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a bit of a trade-off too, right? So you gotta, that is how, innovation comes from different, colliding of different things. If you're always doing the same thing with the same people all the time, it's sometimes hard. I try to get that through reading. I try to get that through, I do shoot out to different networks, but it's something that I as you think about reflection and your foundation, are there the right rooms for innovation too? I mean, so there's lots of different networks out there, and I think it's important to push yourself. And I am in some tech ones, I'm in some investing ones, I'm in some university ones, but I think it is a constant reflection about should and where networks I should be a part of, or any of us should be a part of. Thank you. It was a great question.
Hi, good morning. My name is Candace Branch. I own an employment agency, Excel Employment Services. My question is, I just recently got I guess it's an app or software where we can do email. You can mass email people, that you meet at networking events. And so do you have any suggestions on things that are not industry focused, of ways to just, still communicate with people? Not spamming them, but just,
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
Well, yeah, so look, I have a newsletter, by the way, you can, exponential growth newsletter, and I think about that a lot, right? Because I think the key is you want to send a communication that has so much value that people can't wait to open it and read it, right? If it's not that, and put yourself in their shoes, then it's gonna turn people off, and you'll see that, and that would be my recommendation there. Okay.
Hi, Esperanza Crane with the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. what is your recommendation in terms of time management when you are, I mean, we all are so busy on a just work-wise and family-wise, and then we have all these platforms, so LinkedIn and email and then social media, and you get so many, notifications or requests or emails in terms that you have to respond to. What are your recommendations on how to best manage your time and prioritize?
Yeah,
how
no,
you handle
it's a great question. It goes a little bit to the Aristotle thing about habits. So I don't know. I have a certain lot. I time box it in the morning. I go through different socials. I respond to different socials. It's maybe like a half hour, 45. Then maybe I'll do a little bit in the afternoon, and then I'll do in the evening. And then I have a team in the background that's doing things for me, and I give them guidelines and that. And then I do a little bit on the weekends, but it can be consuming. But so there's an element of your foundation and what you believe in and your goals, and a little bit of meditation, how you do things more efficiently and say no to things. So it's a journey, I would say, but it's about habits. Time boxing is very important, but it's constant reflection. And I'm still learning it as well.
Yes, for me, one of the hardest things to do is the follow-up part. I'm great at, meeting people, getting their card, but then contacting them after, and that takes time. As Esperanza said, we're all so busy.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that? Like, let's say after the conference, I met, 50 people, but it's 50 hours or 50 half hours that I have to invest. What is your recommendation in that regard?
Yeah, it's a great question. One is, I think, to the extent you can templatize your follow-up, at least, hey, we met at GEC, how we connected, and then it's about how can I help you? So you also got to do a little bit of, this is why the word work is capitalized in the book. It's a lot of work, but it's then studying, just not, hey, we connected, great thing, it's like connect with value. No, hey, we met at GEC. I see you're in this business. By the way, I've got these, couple things connection. Here's an article. Here's a connection. And connecting with value, it requires work. And I don't know if there's a way to shortcut it other than, you can templatize a little bit. Have your kind of your signature templatize and get it out. But I don't think there's very few ways you're going to have to do it without putting in the work.
So what I pulled from this somewhat, at least one portion, was that you want to at least do background research on who you're trying to connect with or who you're trying to research with. As you said with that one example with the two people on board, they're both Harvard alum. But for an event like GEC, for example, at least for me, this is the first time I've ever done like a networking event. So without having the opportunity to look into anyone's background, any recommendations on reaching out to new people, even if they're in different industries?
Yeah, it's a great question. So like if I were to meet any of you, I would understand, introduce yourself. Oh, well, hey, what do you do? And you're going to tell me what you do. And then in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about how can I help this person? Who can I connect them to? What are the things I can do to help them? Oh, do you know this person? So that's like, call it without having to study, just maybe but again, you need to have a strong foundation to know what value you can give to that person, no matter whoever you're meeting. So that's how I would do it there. We got 1 minute.
What would you say it looks like for someone who is just getting started in their career to add value to others? Because sometimes it feels like, as someone who's pretty young and just starting, there's not as much I can give. Like, what would your advice be for that?
Yeah, no, great question. So I got a young person on my team. Young is relative, right? But he's 21 or something like that, 22. And what he brings innovation, youth, a new way of looking at things, right? Different perspective, what he's seeing, trends, like artists and all kinds of different things. It kind of goes to your innovation question a little bit earlier, right? Sometimes hanging out with, so he's pushing, like, look, I'm a big tech guy, I love AI and stuff like that, but he's pushing me harder on artificial intelligence because he's seeing a lot that's going on there. So have a strong foundation, have the confidence that you can bring that. You'd be amazed.
Hi, super quick. My name is Charlotte. I work for Arizona State University.
Okay, great.
And we
Been there.
hold oh nice. It's a nice campus. But we hold different networking events for students, and a lot of the students aren't very interested in networking, or they don't really understand the value of networking because they haven't experienced how it can be beneficial to them. So how would you best suggest to, I guess, almost market it to them or to explain to them how important it is?
Yeah, I mean, if not a pitch for the book, but you know, the book lays it out. But look, if you're gonna, the message to them is it's one of the top skills to accelerate your career. So if you want to get an accelerate your career, networking, right? If you want to accomplish your goals more rapidly, networking. If you want to find a job or a new role, like networking. And then I talked about the health thing. So that would be my pitch to them. And then, you know, they're going to have to take the step, right? You know, in the end, you can tell people how valuable something is, and the good ones will hopefully take advantage of it. So hopefully that helps. Okay, last one, I think. Last question.
Even if you're prepared and have the foundation set, you walk into a room, start networking. Most of the other people won't. So how do you engage that conversation? You know, what questions do you ask to actually get into some of that with them? And also, because we obviously get asked all the time, who are you? What do you do?
Yeah.
And that's a terrible question. So what better questions are there? And then how do you best answer that question when you get asked?
Yeah. So sometimes it's where you got to kind of sense and feel the room and how it's going. You know, where are you from? Did you just arrive? What are you looking to get out of this session? You know, without saying, what do you know, like, what do you look? You're here. What are you looking to get out of it? Oh, okay, and then great. Oh, where'd you come in from, right? So you can go that way. You know, I also like to connect people. Like usually you'll know a couple people, you won't know some people at an event. So I like to play the job of, you know, hey, by the way, do you guys know each other, right? And just connecting. You know, it's not only like, do you know each other, but if you know the two people, say, you know, hey, he's an amazing entrepreneur. He's doing ABC. He's done a really cool thing with this. And I think you guys might have a connection here. Oh, no, and Jane over here, Jane is, you know, what she's built doing XYZ is really great. And I think, I think there might be a connection here. And Jane, Jane, she's from this part of there. And I think there's a bit of value, you know, doing that. So that's be the other thing that I try to do, and a couple questions that I ask other than, what do you do? But eventually you kind of get to that, but there's a couple other ways you could think about it. So, well, hey, I'll be around. I think I have a panel later on today. I have an exponential growth newsletter and podcast if you want more. Thank you all. I appreciate you. Have a great conference.